David pushed through the double doors of the supermarket, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement vibrating in his chest. The air was laden with the scent of fresh fruits and freshly baked bread, sounds of carts echoing on the polished floor. He adjusted the badge on his shirt, the name David embossed in bold under the supermarket's bright logo. It was his first day, and the magnitude of the place seemed both intimidating and promising. As soon as he entered, David noticed the bustle. Customers swiftly moving from one aisle to another, employees restocking shelves with robotic efficiency. In the midst of this organized chaos was Mark, the manager, overseeing everything with eagle eyes. Mark was a tall man, with a flawless posture that commanded respect and a bit of fear. His uniform was impeccable, without a crease out of place, and he held a tablet, likely checking the day's performance. David approached, trying not to disrupt the fast-paced rhythm around him. "Mr. Mark," called David, his voice nearly swallowed by the surrounding noise. Mark looked up, sizing David up with a look that seemed to assess every detail. "You must be the new guy. David, right?" His voice was firm, the kind that was accustomed to being heard and obeyed. "Yes, sir. It's my first day and I'm eager to learn everything I can," replied David, extending his hand in a gesture of cordiality. Mark just nodded, not reciprocating the handshake, which made David subtly retract his hand. "We expect excellence here, David. Nothing less. You will follow the rules, keep your station clean, and treat every customer as if they were the only one of the day." "Understood. Understood, sir. I'll do my best," affirmed David, trying not to let his insecurity show. "Good," said Mark, beginning to walk away before stopping and looking over his shoulder. "And David, one last thing. Perfection is the only acceptable standard here. If you don't strive to achieve it, we'll find someone who will." With that warning, Mark walked away, leaving David alone amid the hustle of the supermarket. Taking a deep breath, he looked around, determined to prove his worth. The automatic doors opened again, bringing in more customers and more opportunities for David to begin his quest for the perfection promised by Mark. As he headed to his designated station, David felt the weight of expectations on his shoulders, but also a spark of challenge. It was his moment to show that he could excel, even in such a demanding environment. The journey starting here could be arduous, but David was ready to face each challenge, one customer at a time. As the weeks progressed, David delved deeper into the frenetic routine of the supermarket. Each day, as he passed through the automatic doors, he was greeted not only by the constant buzz of customers but also by the challenge of meeting the nearly unattainable expectations set by Mark. The manager, with his ever-watchful gaze and a clipboard often in hand, patrolled the aisles of the supermarket like a general inspecting his troops. Mark never missed an opportunity to point out any slip-up, no matter how minor, and David, as the newest employee, often felt the weight of these criticisms. "David, speed up the restocking of the shelves. We're not here to dawdle," Mark would bellow from one of the aisles, as he watched David attempt to align soup cans with millimeter precision. "Yes, sir," David would respond, quickening his pace, his forehead beaded with sweat. He quickly learned that every second counted, and that efficiency was valued as much as precision. On another day, while organizing stock in the storeroom, David heard Mark's stern voice before even seeing him. "If I find another box out of place like last week, there will be consequences. This is a supermarket, not your messy room." "Understood, sir." "It won't happen again," David assured, realizing how each of Mark's words could be both a lesson and a warning. The pressure came not only from Mark's demands. Customers also presented their own challenges. One day, an elderly lady approached David with a shopping list she could barely read. Patiently, David helped her, reading the items one by one and fetching each product with her. "Thank you, young man. You are very kind," she said with a smile, giving him a momentary sense of accomplishment. But even these small moments of gratitude were overshadowed by the constant pressure to maintain speed and accuracy. Every task had to be executed perfectly and swiftly, a balance that David struggled to maintain. As the days passed, Fatigue began to accumulate. The long hours on his feet, the weight of the boxes, and the constant tension of being under Mark's critical gaze left David exhausted at the end of each shift. Yet, he did not allow this fatigue to show during work hours. Chatting with other colleagues during brief breaks, David realized he was not alone in his feelings. "It's always like this," commented a colleague, Mariana, as they shared a quick coffee in the staff room. "Mark is tough, but I think he just wants us to be the best. That's what I try to tell myself to get through the day." David nodded, acknowledging that, despite the severity, there might be a reason behind Mark's strictness. This understanding did not make the days any easier, but it gave him a reason to keep going, day after day, as he learned more and more about the art of managing the chaos of a large supermarket. As he prepared for another day of work, reflecting on how he could further improve, David was unaware that a simple act of kindness was about to dramatically alter the course of his journey in the supermarket. It was another busy morning at the supermarket, and the constant flow of customers seemed unending. David, now a bit more adapted to the relentless routine, moved with greater confidence among the aisles, restocking shelves and serving customers with increasing efficiency. Even under the weight of Mark's demands, he was beginning to find his rhythm. In the whirlwind of activity, one customer in particular caught his attention. An elderly gentleman with silver hair, wearing a faded hat and thick-rimmed glasses, struggled to reach a package of coffee on the highest shelf. The man, leaning on a cane, stretched with difficulty, clearly struggling with the task. Without hesitation, David approached. "Let me help you with that," he said, offering a warm smile as he grabbed the coffee and other items the man was pointing at. "Oh, thank you, young man. These bones aren't what they used to be," the man replied with a grateful smile, his voice trembling with age. "Of course, no problem at all. Can I help you with anything else?" asked David, noticing that the man's cart was only partially filled. "That would be great. I have a few more things to pick up, but it's been tough today," admitted the man, who introduced himself as Martin. Together, they navigated the aisles, with David fetching the items while Martin shared stories of his younger days, when things were easier for him. As they filled the cart, David noticed how Martin's company and stories pleasantly distracted him from the constant pressure of work. It was a human reminder within the mechanized routine of the supermarket. When they reached the checkout, David helped Martin place all the items on the conveyor belt and carefully pack them. "Shall we go to your car?" David offered, noticing that the cart was now quite heavy. "Ah, that would be wonderful. I parked a bit far today," Martin responded, seeming relieved by the offer. As they walked to the parking lot, the fresh morning air seemed to invigorate Martin, who continued to talk about his life. When they reached the car, an old but well-maintained sedan, David loaded the bags into the trunk. "You've been incredibly kind, David. Thank you so much for all the help," said Martin, sincerely grateful. "It's my pleasure, Martin. I hope to see you around here again," replied David, feeling a genuine satisfaction for having done something good for someone. With a wave goodbye, David watched as Martin got into the car and drove away. As he walked back to the supermarket, a sense of accomplishment filled him, a small personal victory against the dehumanizing pace of his work environment. However, as he approached the automatic doors of the supermarket, the imposing figure of Mark emerged at the entrance, his face marked by an expression of disapproval. David swallowed hard, realizing that the morning still held more challenges. As David re-entered the supermarket, he felt an immediate shift in the atmosphere. The lightness that had accompanied the relief of helping Martin quickly dissipated upon seeing Mark standing a few steps away, arms crossed. The stern expression on Mark's face was a clear harbinger of a storm. "David, we need to talk." "Now," said Mark in a tone that brooked no argument. Without waiting for a response, he turned, gesturing stiffly for David to follow him to the supervision area, away from the ears of customers but still visible to many of David's co-workers. As they walked, David could feel the curious glances of other employees and the muffled murmur of conversations being interrupted. The sensation of being led to the principal's office weighed on his shoulders, increasing the tension with every step. Upon arriving at the spot, Mark turned sharply to face David, his rigid posture and penetrating gaze intensifying the gravity of the moment. "What do you think you were doing, David? Leaving your post without any permission?" David swallowed hard, the adrenaline of the confrontation making his voice sound weaker than he would have liked. "I was just helping a customer, sir. Mr. Martin needed help carrying his groceries to the car." "That is no excuse for abandoning your post, David. You know very well that you should call one of the floor assistants to handle situations like that. Our efficiency depends on everyone being in their place," Mark reprimanded, his words sharp as blades. "I understand, sir, and I apologize for the error." "It won't happen again," David responded, trying to maintain calm and composure despite the public admonishment. Mark sighed, running his hand through his hair in exasperation. "Look, David, I need everyone here to follow the rules. This isn't just about you. When one person fails, the whole system suffers. I hope that's clear and that this is the last time we have this conversation." "Yes, sir. It will be the last time," affirmed David, feeling each word as an additional weight on his shoulders. The response seemed to satisfy Mark, at least temporarily, who with a stiff nod, dismissed David back to work. Walking back to his post, David reflected on the harsh reality of his job. The supermarket was a world where the rules were as rigid as the shelves were organized, and any deviation was seen not as an act of kindness but as a failure in the system. He knew he would have to be even more careful in the future, staying within the narrowly defined limits set by Mark. With these thoughts weighing on his mind, David resumed his work, determined not to make any more mistakes. However, the injustice of the confrontation still burned in his chest, a constant reminder that compassion was not always compatible with the policies of a large corporation. After the confrontation with Mark, David tried to focus on his tasks, but the harsh words of his manager echoed in his mind, mingling with the constant hum of cash registers and conversations of customers. He knew that any minor mistake could now be fatal, given the severity of the warning he had received. The tension was palpable. Even the smiles of customers seemed to carry a weight he struggled to ignore. However, the real test came later that day when Mark summoned him again, this time to his office, a small cubicle that smelled of old coffee and paper. David entered, feeling a mix of apprehension and hope that perhaps there might be a chance to explain himself better.
"David, come in."
"We need to resolve an issue," said Mark, not looking at him while rifling through some papers on his desk. David closed the door behind him, the soft sound contrasting with the rapid beating of his heart. "Sir, I'm truly sorry about what happened earlier today. I want to assure you that I understand the policy and it won't happen again." Mark finally looked up at him, his eyes hard, showing no sign of understanding. "David, I understand that you're trying to do the right thing, but your actions have consequences. And today's situation went beyond a simple mistake." David swallowed hard, his hands turning cold. "I understand, sir. But please consider that my girlfriend is pregnant, and I really need this job to support my family. I promise it won't happen again." The mention of his personal situation did not soften Mark's expression. Personal circumstances cannot influence professional performance here. You know that. I need a team that can follow the rules without exceptions. "But sir, doesn't everyone deserve a second chance?" pleaded David, despair beginning to color his voice. "Unfortunately, in today's competitive environment, we cannot always afford second chances. You were hired to fulfill a role, and you failed at that today," said Mark, his voice firm and decisive. David felt a void in his stomach. "So, what does this mean for me?" "It means we are terminating your employment here, effective immediately. I regret that it has come to this, but I can't make exceptions," declared Mark, handing a termination form to David. Mark's words fell like blows, each one heavier than the last. David took the form, his eyes scanning the cold words, but he couldn't fully process them. "I understand," he finally said, his voice low. "Thank you for the opportunity." With nothing more to say, David left Mark's office, the sense of injustice mixing with concern about how he would tell his girlfriend. He walked through the aisles of the supermarket one last time, each step heavier than the last, until the automatic doors closed behind him, leaving him outside, unemployed and uncertain about the future. As David walked away from the supermarket, a chance encounter was about to change the course of his life, starting with a simple meal at a local diner. The days following David's dismissal were marked by deep melancholy and incessant worry. He spent hours sending out resumes, anxiously awaiting a response that never came. The pressure of impending fatherhood only intensified his distress, making each day seem darker than the last. On one particularly tough afternoon, David decided to step out to clear his mind and ended up at a local diner, a small establishment with the inviting aroma of coffee and toasted sandwiches. He chose a secluded corner and was about to delve into his thoughts when a familiar voice caught his attention. "David, is that you?" The voice came from Martin, the elderly man David had helped at the supermarket weeks earlier. Martin looked both surprised and pleased to see him, a welcoming expression on his wrinkled face. David stood up, a timid smile appearing on his face despite his concerns. "Martin, what a surprise to see you here. How are you?" "I'm well, my young friend." Feeling the weight of the years, but still taking it one step at a time, Martin replied, chuckling softly. "May I join you?" "Of course, please do," said David, indicating the chair in front of him. As soon as Martin settled in, a waitress approached to take their order. Martin ordered the same as David, a coffee and a ham and cheese sandwich. Once they were alone again, Martin leaned forward, his gaze both curious and concerned. "You look a bit down, David. Is something wrong?" Hesitant at first, David decided to open up to Martin. After all, he had been one of the few people to show genuine kindness recently. "Actually, yes. I was dismissed from the supermarket a few days ago. It's been tough finding something new." Martin frowned, clearly disappointed to hear the news. "Dismissed? But you were so dedicated and attentive. I remember well the day you helped me with my shopping. What happened?" David recounted the entire story, from the incident of helping Martin to the confrontation with Mark and the subsequent dismissal. Martin listened attentively, shaking his head in disapproval at several points. "That seems terribly unfair, David. You were just being human, helping someone in need. It's a shame that your kindness was repaid in this way." "It's tough, Martin. Now, with a baby on the way, I really need to find something soon," David admitted, the concern evident in his voice. Martin touched his chin thoughtfully, his eyes wandering around the diner before settling back on David. "Let me think about this. Maybe I can help you in some way. You made a very positive impression on me that day, and I'd like to return the favor if possible." David smiled, grateful for the sympathy and unexpected support. "I would really appreciate that, Martin. Thank you." The two finished their meal in a lighter mood, sharing stories and laughter. As they said goodbye, Martin handed David a card with an address and a time. "Come see me tomorrow at this address, David. I think I might have an opportunity for you." Curious and slightly hopeful, David thanked him again. He left the diner not just with a full stomach, but with a lighter heart, pondering what the meeting the next day might bring. The next day, with Martin's card securely in his pocket, David headed to the address provided. Anxiety and curiosity mixed within him as he drove through the familiar streets of the city, each mile increasing his anticipation. The address Martin had given him led to a more secluded neighborhood, an area where houses gave way to large estates surrounded by high walls and imposing gates. Upon arriving at the location, David was impressed. The address was a vast mansion, with meticulously maintained gardens and a facade that exuded authority and wealth. He parked his car and, with a deep breath to calm his nerves, walked to the gate where an intercom awaited. After identifying himself, the gates automatically opened, and David was greeted by a flower-lined path that led him to the main entrance of the mansion. The door was opened by a butler, who greeted him with reserved courtesy and led him through a majestic entrance hall to an equally impressive office. Martin was there, seated behind a large mahogany desk, surrounded by shelves of books that reached the ceiling. The environment was welcoming, despite the formality, and Martin smiled upon seeing him, rising to greet him with a firm handshake. "David, I'm glad you came. Please, have a seat," said Martin, indicating a chair in front of the desk. David sat down, still somewhat stunned by the luxury around him. Martin observed him for a moment before beginning to speak. "David, I imagine you're wondering why I brought you here," he began, his hands clasped together on the desk. "I would like to share something with you that I didn't mention yesterday." David nodded, his curiosity piqued. "Yes, sir. I'm quite curious." Martin nodded, taking a deep breath before revealing. "Well, the truth is that I am one of the owners of the supermarket chain where you worked. My family and I manage several stores in the region." David felt a shock of surprise. "You are what? But why? How?" Martin chuckled softly. "I know, it must be a surprise. Occasionally, I like to visit the stores incognito. It helps to truly understand how things are functioning and how the employees treat our customers. That's how we had our encounter that day, and I must say I was quite impressed with your kindness and dedication." David was still processing the information when Martin continued. "And that's why I'm here today. After what happened to you, I thought a lot and decided that I would like to offer you an opportunity to return to our company, not as an attendant, but in a position that allows you to make a difference." Martin extended an envelope to David, who took it with trembling hands. Inside, there was a formal job offer for a managerial position at one of the stores in the chain. "Consider this, David. I believe you have a lot to offer, and it would be a pleasure to have you leading one of our teams," concluded Martin, observing David with an expression of sincere support. David, overwhelmed by emotion and gratitude, could hardly find the words. "This is incredible, Mr. Martin. I don't know how to thank you." "There's no need for thanks," Martin interrupted with a wave. "You have already shown your value. All I ask is that you continue to be the upright man you have proven to be." With his head spinning with new possibilities, David agreed, promising to do his best. As they said goodbye, he left the office not only with a new job but with a renewed sense of purpose. As he headed to the location that would be his new area of operation, he knew that a new phase was about to begin. David drove slowly along the extensive driveway that wound through the vast grounds of Martin's property. As he approached the mansion, its majestic structure emerged, with elegant towers and an ornate facade that reflected the soft glow of the afternoon sun. It was a building that spoke of bygone eras, each stone and window seeming to tell a story of grandeur and tradition. Upon parking the car, David barely had time to absorb the magnitude of the mansion before the vehicle's door was courteously opened by an employee dressed in impeccable uniform. "Welcome, Mr. David. Please follow me," said the employee with a calm voice and a slight nod of the head. David nodded, somewhat stunned, following the man along the polished stone path that led to the main entrance. Crossing the gigantic double wooden doors, David entered a foyer that seemed more like a movie set. The high ceiling was adorned with a crystal chandelier that spread light throughout the space, illuminating the antique paintings and sculptures that decorated the area. The marble floor shone, reflecting the light from the numerous windows and glass doors that opened onto the meticulously cared-for gardens. "This way, please," said the employee, leading David through a corridor adorned with rich tapestries and dark wood cabinets displaying porcelain and antiques. As they walked, the sound of their footsteps echoed, enhancing the feeling that he was entering a completely different world from his own. Finally, they reached a door made of ornate mahogany, which the employee opened, revealing an office that was a true time capsule. Ancient books lined shelves that reached the ceiling, interspersed with old globes and nautical instruments that spoke of the travels and adventures of their previous owners. The large office desk, situated in front of a vast window overlooking the gardens, was covered with papers and artifacts that seemed as old as the mansion itself. Martin was there, standing by the window, looking out at the gardens with a thoughtful expression. Upon hearing the door open, he turned around, his face lighting up with a welcoming smile. "David, I'm glad you could come. Please, make yourself at home." "Thank you, Martin. This place is impressive," said David, still trying to assimilate the grandeur of everything around him. "Yes, it's been the family home for many generations. Every corner has a story," replied Martin, approaching and indicating a chair for David to sit. "But let's set the house aside for a moment. Let's talk about why you are here." Martin then walked to his desk, picking up some documents before sitting down across from David. "As I mentioned, I have something in mind that might be of interest to you." As Martin unfolded his plans, David felt himself becoming increasingly part of something much larger than he had ever imagined. The conversation between the two men flowed, with Martin detailing not only the job offer but also the philosophy behind his businesses, a commitment to excellence and human respect that resonated deeply with David. As the afternoon gave way to evening and the light in the office softened, a new chapter opened for David, one filled with possibilities and challenges. Martin finally set aside the papers, looking directly at David. "I believe this is the beginning of something very promising, David. Are you ready to embark on this journey?" David, with a mix of emotion and determination, nodded. "I'm ready, Martin. Thank you for this opportunity." With a firm handshake that sealed the agreement, both knew they were about to start a collaboration that could transform not only their lives but also the way business was conducted in that vast empire. The reality of Martin's influence and wealth materialized not only in the walls of that mansion, but also in the possibilities that now lay before David. As the soft evening light filtered through the office windows, painting the room in shades of gold and orange, Martin stood up and walked to the window, contemplating the gardens that majestically stretched beyond the glass. David watched, captivated by the seriousness now marking Martin's expression. Turning to David with a thoughtful look, Martin began to speak, his voice filled with resolute determination. "David, there's something I do regularly that might surprise you. I often visit our stores incognito, as an ordinary customer. This allows me to see, without filters, how our employees treat our customers and how the stores are truly managed." David, surprised, leaned forward, intrigued. "That's quite unusual, Martin. What led you to start doing that?" "It's simple," Martin responded with a slight smile. "I believe in the power of example and the true measure of service. I can only correct problems if I know they exist. And that's only possible through direct and unbiased observation." Martin then paused, his gaze becoming more intense. "That's how I saw you helping that elderly customer, and that's how I witnessed the incident that led to your unjust dismissal. I must say, I was deeply disappointed, not in you, but in the way you were treated." David felt a comforting warmth upon hearing these words, knowing that his actions that day had been seen as just by someone he was beginning to deeply respect. "I cannot accept that our employees are treated this way, especially when they are doing the right thing," Martin continued, his voice firm and low. "That's why I decided to take action, not only to correct the wrong done to you, but to ensure this doesn't happen to others." David nodded, the gratitude and relief evident on his face. "That means a lot to me, Martin, and I think it speaks volumes about your company's values." Martin nodded, a clear plan forming in his mind. "I will personally ensure that changes are implemented. And I want to start by giving you the chance to lead by example. I would like you to take on a managerial position where you can directly influence our team's culture." Surprised and moved by the trust placed in him, David felt revitalized and ready for the challenge. "I accept, Martin. I will do my best to honor your trust and contribute to positive change." "Great," Martin responded with a satisfied smile. "We'll prepare everything for your new position starting tomorrow. You will have all the support you need." As the meeting naturally drew to a close, with Martin outlining the next steps and David absorbing the new responsibilities he would take on, Both knew this was an opportunity not only for David to grow but also to improve the entire management system of the supermarket chain. Afternoon gave way to night, and the office was now bathed in the soft light of antique lamps, providing a calm environment for the new plans being drawn up. With a new direction established and a renewed sense of purpose, David was eager to begin his journey as a manager, ready to make a difference not only for himself but for everyone who walked through the doors of the stores under his supervision. The decision was made, and the air in the office seemed to vibrate with renewed energy. Martin, after revealing his proposal for David to take on a leadership role, seemed to contemplate the significant impact this change would bring not only for David but also for the company culture. "David," Martin began, his voice full of anticipation, "what do you think about returning to the supermarket where it all started for you? This time, not as an attendant, but as the manager, taking over Mark's position." David felt a mix of surprise and excitement. The irony of the situation was not lost on him, and the proposal seemed surreal. "Are you serious, Martin? Managing the store I was fired from?" Martin nodded affirmatively, a sly smile on his lips. "Yes, exactly. I believe there's no one better to transform that environment than someone who has felt the system's flaws firsthand. You know the challenges, you know the staff, and, most importantly, you know what not to do." David pondered for a moment, the responsibility of the offer weighing on him. "It's a great opportunity, Martin. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, but yes, I accept. It will be a chance to make a difference, to show that a workplace can be both productive and positive." "Excellent." Martin clapped his hands, satisfied. "And don't think you'll be alone in this. I'll ensure you have all the necessary support, training, resources, and my personal guidance whenever you need it." "Thank you, Martin. This means a lot to me," said David, feeling a surge of determination. "I want the store to be an example of how we treat our employees and customers. A proof that positive changes are possible and sustainable." Martin agreed with a nod. "And that's exactly what we aim to achieve. Your story is already inspiring, David, and now it will be even more so. Let's prepare everything for your transition to management. I'll organize a meeting with the HR team to start the procedures." In the following days, preparations for David's new position were expedited. Trainings were scheduled, plans were laid out, and David was officially introduced to the company's leadership team. Each step brought a mix of excitement and nervousness, but Martin's confidence in him provided a solid foundation of security. Finally, the day arrived when David would return to the supermarket that had marked his lowest point and now represented his professional rebirth. He headed to the store with a sense of triumphant return, determined to face the challenges ahead. As he entered the store, he took a deep breath, preparing himself to confront any remnants of the past that might resurface. But first, he and Martin had an announcement to make to the team, something David hoped would be the first step toward a new era of leadership and mutual respect. The morning was charged with palpable tension as David and Martin approached the supermarket. For David, each step toward the entrance echoed the past, each detail of the parking lot and facade bringing back memories of challenging days. But beside Martin, he felt a new strength, a renewed sense of purpose and determination. As they entered together, Martin's presence caused an immediate stir among the employees. Curious glances and whispers spread through the space as both walked decisively toward the center of the supermarket, where an impromptu meeting was about to begin. Martin took the lead, with David by his side, and called for everyone's attention. "Good morning, everyone," Martin began, his clear and firm voice echoing over the everyday sounds of the store. "Today is an important day for our company and for all of us here. We are here to announce some significant changes that we believe will benefit not only our team but all our customers." The employees gathered, some still uncertain about the purpose of the meeting. David felt the eyes on him, some recognizing him, others questioning his presence beside Martin. Martin continued, "As you know, our company's commitment to excellence and mutual respect is not just a phrase in a manual. It's something that must be lived every day by all of us. Unfortunately, This principle hasn't always been upheld here. Today, that changes. There was a tense pause before Martin announced, "I'm here to introduce the new manager of this store, David. Some of you know him. He started here as an attendant and is now stepping into a leadership role." Murmurs of surprise and recognition spread through the crowd. David stepped forward, feeling every pair of eyes on him. "Thank you, Martin. And thank you all for being here. I know my return might be a surprise, but I'm here to work with you, not against you. My goal is to transform this place into an environment where everyone can feel valued and respected." Then, with a firm look and a voice full of authority, Martin concluded, "And with that, we also announce that Mark, our previous manager, will no longer be with us. We thank him for his services, but we believe this new direction is necessary for the future of our store." The announcement left a heavy silence in the air, broken only when Martin thanked everyone and ended the meeting. The employees began to disperse slowly, some approaching David to greet him, others exchanging impressions among themselves, pondering the implications of these changes. As the meeting disbanded, David felt the gravity and opportunity of his new role. He knew the coming days would be crucial for establishing his credibility and initiating the changes he and Martin had discussed. With the meeting concluded, Martin placed a hand on David's shoulder, smiling. "Welcome back, David. Now, the real work begins." David nodded, energized by the challenge. "I'm ready, Martin. Let's make it happen." Both knew that the road ahead would be challenging but necessary. As the employees returned to their work, David prepared to take his first steps as a manager, ready to transform the supermarket and, perhaps, a bit of the world around him. After Martin's departure, David stood alone in the center of the supermarket, aware of the many eyes still fixed on him. It was time to solidify his position as manager, and he was ready to face the challenge with determination and compassion, qualities he hoped to instill in his team. David began his first day as manager by gathering all the employees for a more intimate and detailed meeting. With the store still quiet before opening, he took advantage of the calm to speak, not as an imposing boss but as a colleague and leader willing to listen and be heard. "Good morning, everyone," David began, looking around at the curious and anxious faces. "I know that change can be scary. Everyone here has felt the weight of a strict environment under the previous management, but I'm here to assure you that we are going to move forward differently." David paused, allowing his words to permeate the silence, then continued, "I want to build an environment where we not only meet our goals but also grow as a team and as individuals. A place where you feel valued and safe to express your ideas and concerns." The employees exchanged glances, and a gradual sense of relief began to replace the initial tension. One of the cashiers, a middle-aged woman who had worked under Mark for years, timidly raised her hand. "David, does this mean we will have more flexibility with our schedules and perhaps more support in dealing with difficult customers?" she asked, her voice trembling but hopeful. David smiled, nodding affirmatively. "Exactly, Maria. I'm here to support you. We will review our scheduling policies to ensure they are fair and reasonable. And as for customer service, we will provide additional training and support. I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed or unsupported." The murmur of approval grew among the employees, and other questions began to arise, each addressing long-repressed concerns under the previous regime. David listened attentively, responding when he could and taking notes when additional measures were necessary. Concluding the meeting, David reiterated his commitment. "This is a new beginning for all of us," he said with calm confidence. "We are in this together, and I am as invested in your success as in the store's success. Let's make this place not just good for shopping but great for working." After the meeting, as the employees began to disperse, returning to their tasks with renewed energy, David felt a strong sense of responsibility and optimism. He knew that changing the culture of a workplace would not be easy or quick, but he was willing to invest the time and effort necessary. Now, with the store about to open and the workday officially starting, David took his place not behind a desk in an office but on the sales floor, side by side with his team. He was ready to lead by example, showing that mutual respect and support would be the new foundation of the supermarket. As the first customers entered, David prepared to face the challenges and rewards of his new role, knowing that each day would bring new opportunities to learn and improve. The transition of power was complete, but the true journey of transformation was just beginning. David began his new role as manager with renewed fervor and a clear vision. He knew that change would not be instantaneous, but he was determined to transform the supermarket into an example of humane and efficient management. To this end, he started by establishing a series of new policies and practices that reflected his leadership philosophy. One of the first mornings after taking the position, David called a meeting with all the department heads. The meeting took place in the conference room, a space that, under previous management, was rarely used for constructive dialogue. David arranged the chairs in a circle, a symbolic setup to encourage openness and equality in conversation. "Thank you all for being here," David began, his encouraging and calm tone capturing everyone's attention. "I want this meeting to be the start of an ongoing dialogue among us. My intention is to hear your ideas and concerns so that we can work together not just to meet goals but also to create an environment where everyone feels valued and motivated." The leaders, some initially skeptical due to the strict policies of the past, began to open up, sharing their experiences and those of their team members. One of the cashier supervisors, Lydia, voiced a common concern. "Many of us feel a lot of pressure to serve quickly, which sometimes compromises the quality of customer service. How can we balance this?" David nodded with understanding. "That's an important issue, Lydia. We will implement a policy that measures not only the speed of service but also customer satisfaction. I want customers to leave here feeling well attended to, not just quickly served. And for that, I will ensure you have the necessary training and support." Additionally, David introduced wellness initiatives for the team, including more flexible breaks and an assistance program offering support for mental and physical health issues. "Our well-being is essential," David affirmed. "We can't take care of our customers if we don't take care of ourselves first." These changes were well received, and David made sure to closely follow the implementation, visiting each department, talking with employees, and, most importantly, listening to their feedback. He also established a suggestion box, where everyone could anonymously contribute ideas to improve the work environment. As the weeks passed, a noticeable change began to occur. Employees were more engaged, and customers started to notice a more welcoming and attentive atmosphere. David knew he was on the right path, but also recognized that the journey to complete transformation would be long and full of challenges. With the foundations of a new standard established and the team beginning to adapt to the new culture, David prepared for the next step, consolidating these changes and ensuring they were sustainable in the long term. He was ready to face these challenges, strengthened by his team's support and the positive impact he was already beginning to see in the day-to-day operations of the supermarket. As days turned into weeks, David began to feel increasingly comfortable in his role as manager. He knew that every interaction and decision contributed to solidifying his leadership and building trust between him and his team. David understood that trust wouldn't develop overnight, but each day he saw more signs that he was on the right path. On a typical afternoon, while walking through the supermarket, David stopped to help one of the new employees, Carlos, who seemed to be struggling with organizing the fruits and vegetables section according to the new presentation standards David had implemented. Instead of simply correcting or giving orders, David approached with a smile and offered a helping hand. "How's it going, Carlos? Can I show you a trick to make the apples look even more inviting?" David asked as he gently began to reorganize the fruits. Carlos looked surprised, not used to the direct and friendly approach of a manager. "Oh, yes, of course. I'd love to learn, sir." David chuckled lightly. "Please, call me David. We're all on the same team here, Carlos." Together, they worked on arranging the fruits, and David took the opportunity to explain not only how but why certain presentations attract more customers. "See how an attractive display can invite the customer to stop and choose? Our job is to make each product as appealing as possible," David explained. Carlos nodded, clearly appreciating the lesson. I never thought about it that way, David. Thanks for showing me. This moment was just one example of how David applied his leadership style daily. He made a point to be present on the store floor, not just to supervise but to participate and support his team. This direct involvement not only helped keep operations smooth, but also reinforced a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. As the team observed David not just talking about changes but actively demonstrating his commitment to those changes, their trust in him grew. Team meetings became more interactive and productive, with employees feeling comfortable expressing ideas and concerns, knowing they would be heard and valued. The work atmosphere, previously tense and formal under the former management, transformed. Laughter and friendly conversations began to fill the environment, not just among employees but also in interactions with customers. The supermarket was no longer just a place to work, but a place where people enjoyed being. With the store's culture gradually changing for the better, David realized that the transformation was just beginning. He was eager to face future challenges, knowing that each step forward reinforced the foundation he and his team were building together. The next phase would involve consolidating these gains and ensuring the supermarket not only met but exceeded the expectations of everyone who walked through its doors. As the atmosphere of the supermarket transformed under his leadership, David also faced significant changes in his personal life. The days became increasingly hectic, divided between his commitment to his role as manager and the anxious anticipation of a new addition to his family. On a bright Saturday morning, David received a call that would change his life forever. He was organizing the promotions area of the supermarket when his phone vibrated. Seeing his girlfriend Laura's name light up the screen, his heart raced. "David, it's time," Laura said, her voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think our little one has decided today is the day." Without hesitation, David responded with all the love he felt. "I'm on my way, love. Everything's going to be okay." Leaving quick instructions with his team, David ran to the parking lot and drove to the hospital, his mind filled with thoughts of what was to come. Upon arrival, he found Laura already settled in the delivery room, her anxious expression softened by his presence. Holding her hand, David felt a deep and unbreakable connection form. The next few hours were a blur of activity, with doctors and nurses coming in and out, each playing their role with calming efficiency. Laura was a vision of strength and courage, and David remained by her side, supporting her every moment. When they finally heard their baby's sharp cry break the silence, they both felt an indescribable wave of emotion. The nurse gently placed the newborn in Laura's arms, and David looked at his daughter for the first time. With fine hair and curious eyes looking straight at him, their daughter was the embodiment of new life and possibilities. "Hello, little Sophia," Laura whispered, tears of joy framing her face. David, overwhelmed, softly kissed Sophia's head and then Laura's forehead. "You two are incredible. I love you both more than anything." The following days in the hospital were a period of learning and wonder, with David and Laura adjusting to Sophia's rhythms and needs. When they finally took Sophia home, each small moment felt monumental. Back at work, the news of Sophia's arrival filled the supermarket with congratulations and good cheer. David felt that his personal happiness positively reflected in his work environment, bringing even more unity between him and his team. With his family now larger, David was determined to maintain a balance between his career and his home life. He knew each day would be a balancing act, but with Laura and Sophia by his side, he felt he could face any challenge. As he prepared to continue his work at the supermarket, David reflected on how his new family reality would influence his future decisions. He was more motivated than ever to make the supermarket a place of success and positivity, not only for his employees and customers but also as an example for his daughter of a world where kindness and care are the norm. As the months passed, the changes David implemented in the supermarket began to bear visible fruit. Sales increased, customer satisfaction reached record levels, and the work environment had transformed into a model of engagement and cooperation. These results did not go unnoticed by the upper management of the supermarket chain, who began to closely observe the remarkable progress of the store under David's leadership. On a sunny Monday morning, While David was reviewing inventory in the stock area, he received a call from Martin. Martin's voice was full of enthusiasm. "David, I need you to come to the central office tomorrow. There are some people eager to meet you in person." Curious and slightly anxious, David accepted the invitation. The next day, he drove to the impressive central office, a modern glass and steel building symbolizing the success and expansion of the supermarket chain. Upon entering, he was warmly welcomed by Martin, who led him to a conference room where several members of the executive board and other senior managers were gathered. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you David, the manager of our store in the West District," Martin announced, introducing David to the group. The board members stood up to shake his hand, expressions of respect and clear interest on their faces. One of the board members, a woman named Helena, spoke up. "David, we have heard a lot about the transformations you led at your store. Reports show impressive improvements in all aspects, from team morale to financial results. How did you achieve this turnaround?" David, maintaining his composure in front of the high-ranking officials, explained, "I firmly believe in the power of management that values both people and results. We implemented more effective training, adjusted schedules to better accommodate employees' needs, and created an environment where everyone can bring ideas and solutions. This not only increased our efficiency but also reinforced a sense of belonging and pride in the work." Another executive, Mr. Thomas, added, "What about customer feedback? How has that been?" David replied, "The feedback has been extremely positive. Our focus on customer service, combined with a welcoming store environment, has brought our customers back more frequently. They come not just to shop, but to enjoy the experience." Impressed, the executives exchanged approving glances. Martin, with a proud smile, said, "David, what you have accomplished is exactly the type of leadership we want throughout our network. We are considering expanding your model to other stores." Martin's words not only validated David's hard work, but also opened the door to new opportunities. David felt a mix of gratitude and excitement, recognizing that his journey was just beginning. With the meeting concluded, David left the central office not just as a successful store manager, but as an emerging leader within the organization. He was determined to continue his work, now knowing he had the full support of upper management to advance his vision. Back at the supermarket, David was ready to face the new challenges that would come with expanding his strategies. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was more motivated than ever to turn those challenges into opportunities for growth and learning. As the supermarket closed for the day, David stayed a bit longer in the office, looking at performance reports that reflected the many recent successes. But more than the numbers, he reflected on the personal journey he had traversed, a transformation that brought him from a low point in his professional life to a peak he had never imagined reaching. Sitting in his chair, he twirled a pencil between his fingers while thinking about everything that had happened. "From being fired to this," he murmured to himself, an involuntary smile emerging. He clearly remembered the day he was fired, a moment he thought marked the end of his retail career. But then, Martin intervened, offering him not just a job, but an opportunity to make a difference. David picked up the phone and dialed Martin's number, feeling it was a good time to express his gratitude. "Martin, it's David. I just wanted to say thank you again. You changed my life in ways I could never have imagined." On the other end of the line, Martin's warm voice resonated. "David, I knew from the day I saw you helping that customer that you had something special. Everyone deserves a second chance, and I only did what was right." David smiled, listening to Martin's words. "I just hope I can do for others what you did for me. Transforming this place was one thing, but transforming people is what really makes me proud. And you are doing exactly that, David. Keep up the good work." "We are all very impressed," Martin replied, encouraging him even more. After hanging up, David allowed himself a few more moments of reflection. He thought about the employees who had grown under his leadership, the improvements that had been implemented, and the customers who left the store with smiles. It was more than he could have hoped for when he started. However, He knew that success was not just about meeting goals or exceeding expectations. It was about creating an environment where everyone could thrive, about being a leader who served both as an example and a support to his team. As night fell, David finally stood up and prepared to leave the office. As he walked through the empty supermarket, he felt a sense of peace and purpose. Each aisle, each shelf, held a story of challenges and victories. And as he locked the door and looked at the building one last time before heading home, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. Ending this chapter of his life with a feeling of complete fulfillment, David was now eager to begin the next, knowing that future challenges would only further strengthen his commitment to his work, his team, and his community. In the light of the following morning, David arrived at the supermarket earlier than usual. The building was still quiet, the calm before the daily storm of activities. Sitting in his office, he opened his notebook, filled with ideas and plans for the future. Each page revealed outlines of projects that would not only enhance the operation of his store, but could also serve as models for other units in the chain. David was immersed in his thoughts when he heard a soft knock on the door. It was Clara, the customer service department supervisor, one of the many people who had flourished under his leadership. "Good morning, David. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I have some ideas on how we can improve the training for new employees. May I share them with you?" "Of course, Clara. Come in. Let's talk," David said, gesturing for her to sit. Clara presented a detailed plan for a mentorship program that would help new hires integrate more quickly and confidently. "This is excellent, Clara. Let's implement it. I believe that every person who joins us should feel like part of our family from day one," replied David, genuinely impressed with her initiative. Encouraged by his team's enthusiasm and the continued support from upper management, David began outlining a series of leadership workshops aimed at all the managers in the network. His goal was to spread the culture of empathy, innovation, and mutual respect that he had established in his store. Later that week, David presented his ideas to Martin and the board of directors in a virtual meeting. "Each of our managers can be a catalyst for change. With the right program, we can transform our entire network into an example of retail excellence," David explained passionately. Martin smiled, his face lit up by the computer screen. "David, your vision and your ability to inspire your team are exactly what our network needs. We will support your initiatives with the necessary resources. I'm excited to see where this will take us." With the support of upper management assured, David felt a wave of gratitude and determination. He knew the challenges would be significant, but he also knew he was well equipped to face them. Every success and every obstacle in his journey thus far had prepared him for this moment. As the meeting ended, David looked out the window of his office, watching the first customers of the day enter the store. Each person walking through the doors was a reminder of the real-life impact of his decisions. With a future full of possibilities ahead, David closed his notebook and stood up. He was ready to guide his team through any storm, armed with a clear vision and a heart full of hope. David's journey as a leader was just beginning, and he was more than ready to lead the way toward a bright and promising future.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.